And we're going to start lying down on our backs.
Okay.
And have your blocks within reach.
Okay.
But come into constructive rest pose with your back on the floor, soles of your feet on the floor. And just start by lifting your arms up and taking a peek at your hands. You can wiggle your fingers, rotate your wrists, and take a few deep breaths as you're doing this. And once you've moved your hands around, you might pull your knees into your chest. And then maybe lift your feet up into the air and do the same thing with your feet. So wiggle your toes, maybe your toes and your fingers, rotate your wrists and your ankles. You might start to notice how those joints all feel, how your legs and arms feel. And then maybe you give everything a little shake before then bringing your feet back down to the ground. And from here, grab a block and place the block between the palms of your hands. So press it between the palms of your hands and hold it up so that you can take a look at it. And then pull one foot up so that your shin is about parallel with the ground. And then you might pull your other shin up to make them both parallel with the ground. And notice if it works for you to have them both up. Think about pressing your low back into the ground, squeezing your hands together, which may help to engage your core here. And then slowly and with control, drop one of your toes down to the ground and tap your toes on the ground and then lift it up. And you can alternate toes here. And if it doesn't work for your back or anything else to be doing, to have both legs up at once, you can have one leg up and then bring that down and bring the other leg up. So definitely check in with your body and honor whatever it's telling you today. But continue alternating legs, whichever option you're choosing. And make sure you're breathing as you do this. Thinking about pressing your back into the ground. And seeing how slowly you can move. Take your time evening yourself out. So you've done equal amounts on both sides. And then lower both feet to the ground. You can bring your block down, set it aside, maybe toe heel your feet out and drop your knees to one side and then the other for a few windshield wipers. As slowly or as quickly as you like. And then when you're ready, grab your block again. Bring your feet back into constructive rest posture and see that your feet are kind of right under your knees-ish, whatever feels comfortable, but aim for having them under your knees. And then take a peek at your thighs and place your block in between your thighs, like squeeze it between your knees there. And then when you're ready, bring your arms alongside your body and slowly start to curl your spine up, starting at the tailbone, until you come into about a straight position from your knees down to your shoulders. And once you're here in bridge or Setu Bandha Sarvangasana, think about squeezing that block and think about pressing down your feet using kind of all 3 or 4 corners of your feet. I feel like my feet just have 3 corners. Some people will say 4, but I have a heel and there's the ball of my pinky toe and the ball of my big toe. And those are the points that I focus on. I have narrow heels. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have wider heels than my little flipper feet, and you can focus on 2 points in the back too. Whatever you're doing here, think about creating that stability from your feet and seeing if you can keep your hips up level, kind of between your, on this straight line of knees down to shoulders. And as you're here, you might notice, are you creating tension in places that maybe don't need it? So are you kind of grinding your teeth a little or clenching in your shoulders? And then as you're ready, you can, starting from the top, roll your spine slowly back down to the mat. And once you get there, you can rest for a moment. If you want to pop the block out, maybe pull your knees into your chest or find a little movement, that's fine. Whatever feels right. We're going to do that again. And this time you can either do it the same exact way using the block if you like that option. And if you want to try another option, I'll demo another option. So when you're ready, you can roll up. And once you're up, if you're not using a block, you might consider shifting the weight into one of your feet and maybe hovering your other foot and then switching and hovering the second foot. And another option would be whatever foot you're hovering, maybe you slide that leg out and keep hovering it on the ground while trying to keep your hips parallel with each other. And then try the same thing on the other side. So you might notice that if you're trying that option, it may be quite difficult to keep your hips parallel and lifted. And just notice where you have to effort in order to keep yourself in these positions. If you're trying these alternate feet movements, even yourself out, and then take your time rolling your spine back down. And once you're back on the ground, whatever you need to do here, maybe you pull your knees into your chest, maybe you try a few windshield wipers, maybe there's something else that feels right. And then whenever you're ready, if you have a block, grab your block. If you don't have a block, you can do this without a block. Pull your left knee in. If you have a block, place it on your thigh and press your right hand into the block and your knee into the block to keep it steady there. And if you don't have a block, it's just hand on thigh and thigh pressing into hand, hand pressing into thigh. So you're creating some tension here. And then from here, lift your other arm and leg, your free arm and leg. So left arm, right leg. And you can keep them up like this, or if you'd like to try slowly drawing them apart from each other, just kind of pausing here and there to notice what exactly happens as you draw them apart from each other. And then maybe slowly bringing them back together. Maybe try that a few times. Not forcing anything, but making sure to keep that tension between your bent arm and leg. And make sure you're breathing here. Once you've done that a few times, you can release that. Take a little break before doing it on the second side. So again, any movement you want to pop in here during your rest, or maybe just stillness. You might try horse lips if you like horse lips. Deep inhale and then fluttering your lips. But when you're ready, bring your right knee in and either place the block between your right knee and left hand, or press your left hand into your right thigh and your right thigh into your left hand. And then maybe you lift your free limbs up, and maybe you slowly draw them apart from each other. Just kind of maybe pausing in different positions to notice what's going on here. How do I have to effort to make this happen? And then if you're exploring that, you might try a few times, slowly widening and then closing that space between your left leg, right arm. And whenever that feels complete, you can drop everything down, release the block, set that aside. And again, anything you want to do in between here. Just take a moment to rest and notice what you're feeling. So I didn't mention it yet, but that would have been a great time to mention, is there anything in this movement that you can enjoy? Because as always, I think it would be could be a very useful thing to notice as we're doing challenging things like that. Whenever you're ready, come up to seated. And from seated, bring your hands behind you so you're resting on your hands, and bring your legs out in front of you with your soles of your feet on the floor or your heels resting on the floor, whatever works. Widen your stance a little and then drop your knees to one side. You can allow that hip to come up, and then drop your knees to the other side. You can allow that back hip to come up again, and try that a few times. Just sort of moving from side to side. And if you notice you're kind of scooching forward, feel free to just reset and scoot your butt back at any point. You're trying these kind of loose windshield wiper movements, starting to mobilize your hips, maybe your low back, and probably a bunch of other places. Once you've done that a few times, come back to center and then grab your block in your left hand, and drop your knees to the right, and then sweep your left hand around and stretch it up, kind of aiming your block away from you at a diagonal and up. So you're in this twist. Notice what you feel here. Maybe check in with your lower hip, see how that's feeling. And then come back to center and grab another block, if you have one, or switch hands with your block, in your other hand, which would be your right hand, and try the same thing. Drop your knees to the left, swing that block around and stretch it up. And then move from side to side at your own pace, just kind of stretching, aiming that block up and away from you. Taking your time to really notice what you're feeling as you move like this. Make sure you're breathing. Maybe you're taking really deep breaths as you do this. But aiming to, if it's comfortable for you to focus on your breath, breathe pretty freely and deeply. Take your time evening yourself out to make sure you've done equal times on each side. And once you have, come to maybe the middle of your mat and place your blocks kind of to the side ahead of you so that you can grab them when you need them. And come into a tall kneeling position and notice how your knees feel. Maybe if you'd like to, you place a cushion underneath your knees. Could be a folded blanket or a pillow. And then from here, see if it's possible. And you can place your hands somewhere for balance if you want to here. But see if it's possible to bring all of your weight into your right knee and hover your left knee. And this might require a lot of arm flapping or grabbing onto something stable like a wall or a chair. Or another option would be to have a block maybe under your right hand so you can place your fingertips on that block. And you could continue attempting to balance here, or you might lift that left leg and draw it out in front of you and see if it's possible to balance in this kind of what I've heard called a praying mantis position with that leg out in front of you. Just take a couple of moments to explore either of those options. And when you're ready, you can step that left leg forward and come into a low lunge. So as you're here in this low lunge Anjaneyasana, check in with the front of your back thigh and see if you can feel a stretch there. You can kind of lean into your front leg in order to feel a stretch in that back leg. But you don't need to go so far that you feel like you're forcing it or uncomfortable. Think about pressing down your front leg and pulling it towards you isometrically. Think about kind of squeezing your back knee and your front foot towards each other isometrically so they don't move, but you're creating some tension there. You can do anything you want with your arms. You might bring them to your hips. You might sweep them up. Whatever feels right to you. And then 2 options next. And I'll demo them and then you can choose. So the first one would be bringing your hands to your blocks, curling your back toes under, lifting that back leg, the back knee, so that you're in a higher lunge here, and then lifting your body into this tall lunge, or keeping your hands on the blocks if that feels better. The second option would be curling your back toes under, maybe keeping your hands at your hips or bringing them out to the side for balance purposes, and lifting your back leg without having your hands on your blocks. So you'll be in a tall lunge at the end of it, whatever you're choosing. Once you're in this tall lunge, you can stay balancing on those back toes, or if it feels better to you, you could spin your back heel down. Just depends what you want to focus on today. Maybe you sweep your arms up. Maybe you try cactus arms. Maybe you keep them at your hips. And then when you're ready, launch yourself forward into mountain pose, either with a few steps or a big step all at once. And once you're at the front of your mat, take a deep breath, sigh it out. And just pause in mountain and notice how you're feeling. When you're ready, sweep your arms up, reach up, Urdhva Hastasana. Hinging from your hips, fold forward, Uttanasana or forward fold. Pause in your forward fold, noticing how that feels. And if coming all the way down into a full forward fold feels yucky on your back, you can bend your knees and rest your forearms on your knees with a flat back. When you're ready, bring your hands down to the floor, plant your hands, walk your feet back into downward dog. Take a breath in downward dog, and then lower your knees back down to the floor. Walk your hands back to your knees and come back up into your high kneeling position. So from here, we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So bring all of your weight into your left leg and see if you can hover your right knee. And again, it could be really useful to place a block down under your left hand, maybe having your fingertips on that hand. And you might consider continuing to try balancing here, or maybe you bring that right leg forward and see about balancing with that, the toes of your right foot kind of hovering over the ground. Take your time kind of playing around with that for another little bit, or doing anything else you want to do. And then whenever you're ready, if you're not already in your low lunge, step that right foot forward and come into your low lunge, Anjaneyasana. Same thing here. See about creating some engagement in your low body. So really thinking about squeezing things towards that midline, doing whatever you like with your arms. Noticing wherever you feel a stretch or effort, maybe looking for something to enjoy here. And then when you're ready, those same two options, curl your back toes under, maybe place your hands at your blocks and lift yourself up. Maybe keep your hands up and straighten that back leg. However you like to get into your tall lunge, come into that and then decide, do you want to balance here on your back toes with your heel up? Or do you want to spin that heel down? Your choice. Whatever you'd like to do with your arms. If you want to keep them down on your blocks, if you want to keep them at your hips, maybe you lift them up. Make sure you're breathing. And whenever you're ready, you can step your back leg forward. Maybe a big step, maybe a few little steps. Come into mountain and notice, what are you feeling? And from here, a couple of options. So notice if you're feeling tension anywhere in your body. And if there's someplace in particular where you're feeling tension, like maybe your neck is kind of tense now. If your neck is tense, you might drop your chin to your chest and try a few arcs, drawing your chin from shoulder to shoulder slowly. If you're feeling tension in your shoulders, you might roll your shoulders around a few times. If your quads are kind of tight, feeling a little burning here, you might come into a quad stretch by grabbing your foot in your hand and squeezing your foot a little towards your butt. But just really notice what's going on in your body right now and decide what would be really beneficial to you right now. Take the next couple of minutes to explore whatever that is for you. And if you're choosing a stretch, just remember that stretching sometimes feels like we have to force a stretch and go like 100%. And it's actually even more beneficial to back off from that 100% and just do kind of a moderate, what feels like a moderate stretch. Take your time finishing up whatever it is that you chose to focus on. And when you're ready, come to the front of your mat. From here, we do this slow motion walking thing pretty much every week. We're going to try that again. And you can turn around and do it forwards, walking forwards, or you can do it to the side if you like that. Or something I don't think I've ever had us do is trying it backwards. So if you'd like to try it moving backwards, bring all of your weight into your left leg, hover your right foot, and slowly keeping all of your weight under your control, start stepping that right foot back. And without placing any weight on it, drop your toes down to the ground. And once they're on the ground, slowly start shifting your weight into your right foot. Once it's all in your right foot, only then hover your left foot and repeat. So essentially, you're just really controlling where your weight is at all points. And once you get to the back of your mat, you can either walk forwards or sideways, or you might turn around and walk backwards again, just depending on what feels most useful to you. Take your time making your way to the end of your mat, wherever you are. And once you're at one end or the other of your mat, turn around so you're facing the short edge of your mat. Find mountain pose. And then sweep your arms up, reach up, Urdhva Hastasana. Maybe look up, ground down through your feet, stretch up through your fingertips. And on an exhale, hinging from your hips, fold forward, come into your version of a forward fold, whether that's a half forward fold or dropping your body down towards the ground, relaxing your back. When you're ready, plant your hands on the ground, walk your feet back into downward dog. Or if downward dog doesn't work for you, you can walk your feet back a little and come into tabletop by dropping your knees down. And if you're in downward dog, you might try pedaling your feet a few times. If you're in tabletop on hands and knees, you might try a few cat-cows. And then wherever you are, drop your knees down into tabletop. Walk your hands back and come into a seated position. However you need to get there. And once you're sitting down, bring your legs out in front of you. They don't have to be right together, but you're aiming to kind of send your legs towards straight and have them either together or apart a little bit here. You're in Dandasana. See if you can sit up tall and notice if your back starts to round and it just really wants to round. And that's totally fine. It's normal. One thing that can be really useful for sitting up tall is placing a cushion or something under your butt to kind of lift your hips up. See if you can find a pretty tall spine here. And bring some engagement into your legs. See if you can kind of straighten through your legs, flex your feet. You might have your fingertips on the ground beside you. And you can stay here, or you might decide to fold forward. And if you do so, you can certainly bend your knees either way. If bending your knees makes it more comfortable, that's totally fine.
But maybe you hinge forward from your hips with a gentle rounding of your back and come into Paschimottanasana, seated forward fold. And if you're doing this, pay attention to where you're feeling a stretch, if you are feeling it anywhere. And if you're feeling it like in the backs of your knees or kind of right where your legs feed into your hips, you want to try to aim to not feel it so much there, to feel it more in the center of your hamstrings. So bending your knees can sometimes help. Coming up a bit from the stretch can sometimes help. You might start taking really long, deep inhales and even longer exhales. And then if you're folded forward, come on up and make your way down onto your back. Once you're on your back, pull your knees in towards your chest. Give them a little bit of a squeeze and then lower your left leg down straight out onto the mat. Bring your left hand over your right knee. Extend your right arm out to the side and twist your right knee over towards the left, allowing that hip to come up. Whatever you'd like to do with your head is fine. You might try looking over your right shoulder, but only if that feels okay with your neck. And come back to center, unwind everything. Pull your knees back into your chest. Drop your right leg out and down onto your mat. Right hand over left knee. Extend your left arm out to the side and twist your left knee over towards the right, allowing that hip to come up off the ground, aiming to keep both your shoulders pressed into the floor. When you're ready, unwind and take your time setting yourself up for Shavasana. Maybe you want to stay laying down. Maybe you want to come up into a seated position. Whatever feels restful. And if you want to close your eyes for Shavasana, that's fine. You don't have to. Just take the next few minutes to see if it's possible to let go of thoughts when they start to pull you away from the present moment. And if focusing on something like your breath or a sound is useful, you might try that. Notice if your mind is wandering. You can start to deepen your breath a little bit. Maybe wiggle your fingers and your toes, find a little movement. Or as always, you could stay in Shavasana if you feel like that's something you really could use today. But as you're ready, if you'd like to transition out, you can take your time, maybe coming into a seated position. And wherever you are, just take a moment to extend some appreciation towards yourself or something specific, no matter how small it is. And then just a moment of appreciation and acknowledgement for the many and vast lineages of yoga which originated on the Indian subcontinent and in South Asia, and the many people who kept these traditions alive and shared them with the rest of the world.